There is no growth in comfort and no comfort in growth. Yet the big leaps are how careers are made and how businesses excel. So how do you master not knowing at all or feeling like an imposter? How do you have the conversations that will lead to trust and, of course, excellence? How do you take charge of the things that you can control? How do you thrive outside your comfort zone? That's what this podcast is about. I'm your host, Wanda Wallace, and it's time to get out of the comfort zone. Welcome to the conversation. So as a manager, one of the things you're required to do periodically is to give bad news, and probably more of it than you would really rather like to be delivering. And if you happen to be a person that likes to please people or to keep your team happy or to keep others happy, then delivering bad news is likely to be extremely difficult for you, or just uncomfortable, I should say. So the question for the day is, how do you say no? How do you deliver negative news, negative feedback? How do you say you can't meet a promise, or any other difficult news, and survive another day to keep going without jeopardizing your career? And this is going to apply whether you're talking to senior leaders, you're talking to your manager directly, you're talking to your peers, to your team, or even to customers. My guest today is full of wonderful experiences and tried and tested tips. Mahesh Guruswamy is a seasoned product development executive who has been in the software development space for over 20 years and has managed teams of varying sizes for over a decade. Currently Chief Product and Technical Officer at Kickstarter, but before that he ran product teams at Mosaic, Kajabi, and Smartsheet. Mahesh has caught the writing bug. I love this from his favorite writer, Stephen King. And he started writing short stories and then discovered that these longer books were actually a great way to share some wisdom with people. And as a result, we have a fabulous book. I love it. How to Deliver Bad News and Get Away with It, A Manager's Guide. Mahesh, welcome to this conversation.
Yeah, happy to be here. And by the way, I stopped writing short stories because my publisher told me it won't sell. So write what you know about. So that's why I write business books.
I love that. I don't know. I've seen a lot of people in business convert to writing novels, short stories.
Sure.
So there may be hope for you yet, Mahesh. I don't give up on it completely. Though, based on the quality of this book, maybe you need to write another business book. I don't know. But what a great topic, how to deliver bad news. Why? So I get that you would like to write and you started writing because you like to write, but why this topic?
Well, a few reasons. One is when I started out as a manager, when I first had to deliver bad news to somebody, I was looking around for help. I was like, how do you do this stuff? Especially, I'm a people pleaser, so I don't like to make people upset. And when I was struggling to give bad news to, I think it was an employee back then, I found out that there's really no resources. And managers are oftentimes put into those positions, by chance or because a company needs. They don't really get the right training, specifically in the messy bits of management, as I like to call it. My wife works for Google, and she has gone through the manager training. And none of it touches upon how do you deliver bad news to stakeholders, employees, customers, whatnot. So it started out as, I started writing notes for myself. So I would encounter a tough situation, do it poorly, mediocre, sometimes well, and go back home and write down what went well, what would I improve upon next time. And those ended up becoming a set of essays. Eventually, when I became a manager of managers, a leader of leaders, I started giving those essays out as help to them. And over time, I realized that there's like a need in management books that cover this topic. So I decided to put a book together. So two big goals. One is help new managers figure out how to tackle this messy side of management. And B is, just for myself, I wanted to get this out in a book fashion. And so here I am.
Great. I totally agree. I see a lot of companies around the globe, and I think we're doing a horrible job for the younger managers in the organization. We may do fine introducing people to the first level of management, which is largely how do the systems work and what's your responsibility as a manager. But the messy bits, as you describe, we just don't teach it. And I'm watching managers who are overwhelmed, feeling the pressure from above, the pressure from the younger generation wanting to be led particularly well, and no clue where to turn. And I think we could list 15 topics of this is one. And a shout out, if anybody's interested in that, go to my website, exceptionalleader.com, because we have some solutions there. We don't have this solution though, Mahesh, so I'm super happy to dig in to this particular topic. All right, so let's talk at the one that's the scariest. Senior stakeholders, boss's boss, or even above that, people who have a big stake in your say of your future, your evaluation as talent, a whole bunch of things. How do you say, well, let's start with no. How do you say no to them? No, I can't do it. No, I can't meet that deadline. No, I can't deliver what you think I should deliver.
Yeah. It is. It is actually the scariest. Maybe I'll share a personal anecdote, a story that I experienced in the past. So I was in a large-ish size company, and I was up for promotion. So I was going from senior director to VP, which is squarely executive role. And I was tasked with leading a large project, which was sort of kind of the flagship project that'll like make my promotion case easier. So I was responsible for the project. It had many stakeholders, and the chief executive, who was the sponsor of the project, was the COO. So they were very much invested in the success of this project. And they were like trusting me to like deliver on the commitments, on the deadline that I promised them to do. I found out that we won't be able to hit the deadline, and for various reasons, we underestimated the effort it's going to take to deliver the project. We made some incorrect assumptions on what is required and what is not required for the feature. And ultimately, my team came back and told me, even if you work nights and weekends, there's no way we can get this done on time. So now I have to go tell this executive, who will most likely be in the panel that decides my promotion, that this project is not possible anymore on this deadline. So I took a flight to go meet them in person, because this is back then when you can actually do that. I mean, yeah, I suppose you can still do that, but it's much more okay to like deliver these pieces of news on Zoom, these days. So I took a flight. I walked into their office, and I can immediately tell they were not happy. They were not happy to see me because I've already heard the news that the project's going to be delayed. So the first thing I told them was, I'm sorry, this is my fault. And instantly that reduced the temperature in the room, because that's exactly what the other leader was looking for, is somebody to take accountability and responsibility for the future of this project. And the minute I said, I'm sorry, this is my fault, I will set this right, their tone changed from, I'm going to skewer you on this miss, to how can I help get this project back online, back on track. And that's one piece of advice that I give to all leaders, is when you're delivering bad news to a senior stakeholder, you have to take the blame, right? You can't like put it on anybody else. You can't put it on God. You can't put it on fate. You have to say, it's my fault. I made this mistake because I was responsible for the success of this project, and I'll figure out how to get it back on track. So we talked for a bit, and then we sort of at a high level got aligned on what the new set of features might look like, a scaled down version of the feature, and the new timelines, what they might look like. And then I promised them a few things, like, hey, this new timeline, I'll hit that deadline, because my team told me that they'll be able to hit that deadline. So my plan was to hold my team accountable, myself accountable, hit that deadline. And two, I'll send you regular status updates. And that's another key piece of kind of framework that I use, is along with taking accountability and responsibility, also give them information. So every week I would send out a status report saying this is where we are. And I also encourage the executive to spend time with my team, because it's important for my team to understand why this project is important, what it means for the company, and showing that a senior executive who sits with the CEO is interested in the success of this project. So in the end, we hit that deadline. My promotion didn't happen though, right? Because it didn't happen that time. I think next cycle it happened, and I understood the reason. I technically missed the deadline, so I didn't deliver on what I promised I would do. But the more important thing for me was it didn't erode the trust the executive had in me, and that's what's more important for me for the future projects, future additional responsibilities and the future promotion too.
Ooh, I'm disappointed they didn't go ahead and give you the deadline. I was hoping, or the promotion. I was hoping you were going to say that, that worked out, but sometimes it doesn't.
It doesn't.
All right. So the elements are, I'm sorry, admitting that this is a problem, and it is my fault. I accept responsibility. That is a really hard thing to say because there's a ton of extenuating circumstances that cause this. So saying, I'm sorry, this is my fault is like, ooh, that's a really difficult one. But I agree with you. Senior leaders want to know that you're taking accountability for it. And the moment you don't, man, they are coming after you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. This is the lesson it was drilled into me at Amazon, where one of their core leadership principles is ownership. Nothing is beneath you. You take ownership of whatever is entrusted in you. And the minute you say something along the lines of, this is not my fault, this is the market's fault, this is the other team's fault, my boss's fault, it will never end well. So, and, from that time on, I just made it my personal leadership principle to never put the blame on anybody else and just take it on myself.
Right. All right. So just for curiosity, looking back on that event, do you think you really made mistakes, or was this really truly one of those circumstances we got surprised middle of the way through and there was no way to fix it?
No, well, there were definitely mistakes made. So I think the big learning for me was you never put a deadline in front of a large group of people if you don't believe in it. So we had an initial presentation to the executive team, and we had a sort of rough timeline there. And I remember caveating that, that timeline, saying, hey, this is a rough timeline. We just roughly guess this is how long it's going to take. In hindsight, the right thing would have been just making it clear that we don't have a timeline yet. We'll get you a real timeline if you give us a few weeks, right? And that would have gone down much, much better than agreeing, just showing a timeline. So that's number one. That was the biggest lesson learned for me, is never put a timeline in front of a group that's hyper focused on getting stuff done on time and sort of going above and beyond. So that's a lesson learned for me.
Right. Yeah. And rough doesn't do, because, that becomes then fixed in their mind. You said March 15th. And so where is March 15th?
That's
I don't
right.
care what you said rough on, that still gets fixed in their mind. That's also an interesting one, because the next question I want to ask is, how do you say, in effect, I can't get you what you need on the timeline that you need it on? At the front end of it is also a second story I want to talk about. But what you're saying there is that you're better off to say, realistically, I can't give you an honest number until I dig into it deeper. And I want to give you an honest number. And that is better than a false promise.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I think a lot of it also comes down to attitude, the way you approach these conversations. My old boss used to say is never start on failure. So when somebody asks you something, like a CEO asks you, can this be done? Don't explain away your potential future failures already, right? By saying, well, this is complicated this way. This is going to take time. We need more people here. Just say that, yeah, it's possible. With enough time and money, anything is possible in the world. We can send rockets to Mars if we had enough time and money. So you can say, yes, it's possible. This is what the constraints are we're dealing with right now. You have the option to change the constraints if you want. You can give us more money. You can give us more people. Or you can reduce the scope of what you want to do. So here are some of the levers you have. But if you're really committed to getting this done, I'll help you, get that thing done. That was also a good lesson learned from one of my old bosses, who said, never start with a no, because that's always going to taint the rest of the conversation, especially with senior leaders. So start with yes, and then figure out how to get them what they need in a reasonable manner.
I always say the best, and you just reinforce it, the best way to say no is to say yes if.
Right.
Yes, if you will give me more resources, give me more money, give me more time. Yes, if you will take this off my plate. Yes, if you can live with an approximation. Yes, if you can live with a beta version. Yes, if you can get rid of this feature. Yes, if. And then negotiate for what makes it feasible to actually do it. And then be honest. Yes, if you can wait until Monday instead of having this on Friday.
That's right.
And it's interesting. So I do see, in fact, I had an experience of this just yesterday with a client. I was in a face-to-face session. I get a senior group of people coming into the client. They are all in the client. They're all 100% focused on the conversation that's going on in the room. And these are very, very senior people with lots of demands. I have the junior level just below them and substantially more junior in terms of experience as a leader than the senior group, but still just below, come in, can't sit for 15 minutes without having to get pulled out for something else, have to answer this, that person can't do that, I can't. It's like they can't get themselves out of details in order to do the things that they really need to focus on. And it's a very interesting tactic that saying no sometimes is the smartest use of your time. Either no, I'm not coming to that session with Wanda, or no, you've got to carry the ball on this for the next hour and then I'll get back to you. So it's a really important one. Okay, let's go to the case where I now have to say to my boss. Usually that goes in the form of, I can't meet your deadline, or I can't do what you asked me to do, or this thing that you thought is possible isn't really possible, or my priorities are different than your priorities. I don't know, pick your favorite one of that. How do you say no to a boss?
Well, I think maybe I'll pick on the hardest message to deliver to the boss is if you fundamentally disagree with the way they look at strategy for the company, right? And so there are a few dimensions to it. One is, one thing is I always encourage leaders to practice giving feedback to your boss during peace times. So what I mean by that is, when I was learning to ride a bike, one of the things they teach you is how to put your bike down in the shop when you're learning and then pick it back up. Because their thing is, you might have a fall on the freeway. If you don't know how to pick an 800-pound bike, then you're going to be in a world of hurt. So figure out how to do it during peace times inside the shop when there are like people around you. And that has always stuck with me as a life lesson. So I practice giving feedback to my boss during peace times. When everything is going great, I would say stuff like, hey, I sort of like not agree with this decision here. Maybe we can talk through it and see how they react. And so one thing about CEOs and very senior leaders is they are hired for a specific reason, or they're hired for a specific attitude and edge they have. And I think compare that to mid-level managers or even like early executives. Some of those things might be non-negotiable for them, right? So they might not be willing to change their minds on a few things. So it's a thing in peace times. If you can figure out like what is non-negotiable for them and what is negotiable for them, you can sort of figure out whether it's worth disagreeing with them on a future topic. And if I ever find myself in a situation where I fundamentally disagree with the leader on the sort of the future of the company or the strategy that they're adopting, and I know that they're not going to change their minds, I have two choices. One is either I disagree and commit. I disagree privately, and then I would just commit to the decision because they have decided that that's the right thing to do for the company, and I'm going to support them through that change. Or find another job. If I have like ethical and moral issues with the strategy that they're adopting, I might just leave the job because I know that they're not going to listen to reason. So it's time for me to move on. I would say that most bosses are okay with taking sort of technical feedback, which is, hey, this feature here should look like this, and here's the data for it. This feature here, this sort of customer interaction here didn't go well for this reason. Let's do it this way. I think they find it hard to take adaptive feedback, which is if you tell them your leadership approach is wrong, then it could go either way, right? It could go. I've met very, very few leaders and executives who have taken that feedback well, right? Because it goes against the grain of why they were hired. So most likely they'll say, well, I hear your feedback, but I don't agree with you, and I'm not going to change my mind. And you just have to be comfortable with what you're going to do next.
Yeah. I do find you can say, if you're at the right timing, I want to come back to timing in just a minute, that you can say to a manager, this is like practice in the peacetime that you said. You can say, look, I get that this is your approach, but it isn't working as well for me.
as I'd like. So if you say for me, it's not for the team, it's not for everybody else, it's not for the organization, isn't working for me, and then explain, and then stop talking, you have a shot at getting them to at least think about what they're doing and make a choice if they're willing to adapt or not adapt. But if you go in with a you're wrong, I lead with a negative as you start with at the beginning, all you do is dig in defensiveness and you're kind of pretty stuffed at that point. So, but again, you want to do that in peacetime, not in the heat of battle or in an urgent situation or up against a deadline, because then it's like, why, this is not the time to be telling me.
That's right.
But Mahesh, also buried in what you're saying is that there are moments to challenge and moments when it's too late to challenge. So it's recognizing, is this already decided and done and dusted and there's no movement on it? Or is this a moment where we're still kind of debating and it's not been put in stone yet?
That's right. That's right. I always ask it explicitly to the executive team and even the CEO. Have you already made a decision on this? Or are we still debating this? If the debate is over, then it's time to just move on, right? Because one of the things that newer managers and executives do is try to argue after the decision has been made, more as as a show to their team that they care about their opinions. So they want to bring their voice forward, like senators and congressmen would do. And the second is they have their own ego to itch. So you're oh, I want to make sure my voice is heard. So I'm going to debate this after the decision has been made. That will always end well. It does not end well. Is what I've seen, right? So if the decision is made, especially at the executive level, you can't open it back up. It's just going to cause confusion. It's going to throw your team into a direction that might not be helpful for them to go in.
Well, if you get a negative reputation for not knowing how to manage the conversations or being the negative voice in the room or not cooperative or whatever, that taints your team's reputation. So it does not help them at all. I know they might like you, and I know teams always say, you got to push back, you got to push back, you got to push back. But there's the moment to push back, and then there's the moment to say it's too late. Now we either get on board or we leave, I think.
That's right. Also, last thing on that, that's also one of the reasons why newer managers and inexperienced executives try to start with no, because they're sending a signal to their team, and their team will be oh, my boss pushed back publicly to support us, but they're not understanding what's going to happen after, right? Because it just causes confusion at the executive level.
How do you explain that to your team when you're not going to push back?
Well, I think the way I tell my team is, so if I'm included in the decision, right? So my voice is part of the conversation. I go to my team and say, this is what I'm going to present. This is my point of view. Tell me if you agree with this or not. And I might get feedback saying, yep, this is right, this is wrong. And one of my frameworks that I use is I'm always transparent with my team on what is democratic decision and what isn't. So I always tell my team, for example, how you do projects and what kind of processes you use is up to you. But the strategy, org structures, compensation, that's my call. I make the final decision on this. I'll always solicit input, but in the end, it's going to be my call, and you might not agree with some of it, but in the end, that's my call. And just like that, I tell my team, I'm going to go to this conversation with this point of view, and chances are they might, go my way, or they might not go my way. If they do not go my way, then I'm going to disagree and commit, because I want to support the decision that the executive team has made. So my team always knows where I stand all the time, and I encourage managers to also disagree and commit. It's no point in trying to argue about something that is already done and dusted. It's just not helpful.
Right. And then you get a reputation for being somebody who's negative, naysayer, unwilling to get along with people, isn't collaborative, not proactive, yada, yada, not strategic. We get all of those adjectives thrown in there. But again, we come back to this notion of, is there still room for debate, or is the decision largely done? And that is not a hard and fast, it's done. It's it's largely already made. Good luck getting it to move. Now, the secret to that, Mahesh, is how do you make sure you get into those conversations when it is a bit more democratic, when people are willing to listen to the pros and cons of your debate? Any advice on that one?
Well, I think when I think strategy is a great a great example where there's like democratic process, right? So you solicit feedback from the team. The thing I've learned that works really well is setting the guardrails of how big the sandbox is. So you can say, we have these many people, we have 12 months, and we want to move the company revenue from here to here. And at a high level, the investment themes are going to be A, B, and C, right? And that goes down to the team, and then I'll tell the team, hey, come back with the projects you want to do that will hit those A, B, and C goals and help move revenue from X to Y. And that provides like a framework for people to think and ideate and sort of brainstorm and figure out like what projects to do. And I think there are always going to be some groups of people who think that ABC are wrong, and who might say, "Hey, we should do this D thing," And my usual response to that is, "Yep, we understand the D is also important, but as a company, we have to decide whether we can, what we're going to invest in, and." Given the size of our company, we can only focus on these three things or two things, or sometimes even just one thing, and here's the reasons for it. And usually, like, people agree that, okay, yeah, that makes sense. If you have a team of 100, you can probably do like 5 big things and 10 small things, right? So you cannot do like 30 large things or 40 large things. You just can't do it. So I don't dismiss it out hand. And in some occasions, like I've actually changed the company strategy too because of feedback from the team, and say, hey, one time they came back and said, hey, we know that you think this is important, but we actually think this is more important. Here's the data to prove that this is more important. And I was convinced, okay, well, our customers are saying they want this, so let's like make room for it in the roadmap, and let's do this thing later.
Okay, that's interesting. But you presumably earn the reputation of somebody that they want to listen to by all the things that you've already done. So practice your feedback and your disagreement in peace times, by being accountable and saying, I'm sorry, and I'll deliver, and then by actually delivering, and all the components that you've labeled, knowing when to argue, when not to argue. That build your reputation so that make it chances that they will hear that at the right moment in time. One of the things, Mahesh, that people say routinely is that my manager isn't making transparent what the strategy is, or how I fit in the strategy, or what the purpose and what the rationale is. And I just want to say, you just did a beautiful, very simple job of explaining how to do that. It is not hard. The company has decided that they want to go from A to B. That's pretty much public knowledge. In order to go from A to B, that means they need 3 things from us, A, B, and C. These are going to be the 3 things that we're delivering in the next year in order to enable the company to go from A to B. All right? Now, think about what that means in your world. What do you want to be part of? What are the small things that have to happen in order to get A, B, and C done? That's it. What a great description of how to describe what the purpose is of what we're doing, what we're not doing.
That's right. Like, one thing I've noticed, sort of junior executives or inexperienced leaders do is they go directly to the specific task or project that they think should be done. And that is a mistake. This is when teams will go, well, how did you decide this project is needed or important? So I kind of firmly believe in bottoms-up thinking, but as I said before, like, let's have guardrails on the sandbox so that people just don't go completely like all over the map, right? You still want to focus them into a few set of focus areas.
Right. When I talk about getting teams to be accountable or individual members to be accountable, I think that there is the sense of the goal. We're going from A to B. That has to be solidly in the ground and kind of a little bit unmovable. And then I talk about the lanes, where the boundary conditions, your sandbox, what can we play with? Where is our degrees of freedom, and what's the territory that we can't go into because time, money, etc., unless something goes haywire, and then we have a different story. All right. When you have a team member who says, I don't agree with that, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to drag my feet, or I'm going to resist in some way, and you have to go to them and say, okay, no go, in some version. How do you handle that one?
Oh, so I have an example. Maybe I'll share that because it's very connected to this conversation. So right after COVID ended, the company that I work for decided that part of the company should come back to the office, and like coming back to the office is one of those conversations that can go either way, right? There's like data to prove for one way, data to prove the other way. So I didn't like really try to like argue for one side or the other. So I was like, okay, the company has decided that they're going to bring some people back to the office. I'm going to support it, right? Because I'm going to support the CEO and the company's decision. So when I talked to my team, a lot of people were upset, but ultimately they figured out that, okay, I'm going to get myself to come to the office. And I also told my team that, if it is like, if you have childcare issues or, if one of those days, like you can't like make it to work, it's fine, right? But the thing is, we've decided as a company to come back to the office, and working from home will become a perk. There's one team member who had like a really tough time with it, right? So, and they didn't have constraints at home, but because philosophically they couldn't agree with the decision the company had made. So I talked to them and I tried to explain to them disagreeing and committing is, they had aspirations to become leader in the future. So I kind of coached them through, hey, if you want to become a leader, you have to like learn the skill. You can't be dogmatic about, things like this. And I told them like, even though, I might disagree with the decision, but we have to like commit to this future. And they was like struggling. I ultimately told them, if you can't commit yourself to this decision, you will not be happy here. So, think about it for like a few weeks. And if you can't like get yourself to commit to this decision, you have to think about like a new job. And I'm not like saying to like force them out, but I'm just saying, if they can't commit, it's just going to eat them away from inside, right? And in the end, they left the job. They took a package and they left, and not like in bad terms. They were like, "Oh, I disagree with the company's decision, so I'm going to go somewhere else, which is fully remote, and I respect that decision." And it ended well for everybody, right? There was no heartache. There was no like back and forth, and it gave the team a sense of normalcy because okay, the turbulence is gone now. So that's what I would say. I can't like argue you into submission, right? It's just not a useful use of my time or your time. So you have to decide whether this is something that you can commit to, and if you can, you just got to find another job.
I like that. I like this notion that disagree and commit. Now, disagree, I presume, doesn't mean I keep saying at every available opportunity, I disagree. It's you articulate, this isn't what I believe is best. I've said it. I've given my rationale. I've presented that. And I stop and say, okay, fine. I am now willing to commit.
That's right. A really cool example that I've heard in the halls of Amazon is Jeff was adamantly against Prime Video. So his executives keep coming to him saying, hey, Netflix was there, so we could like really be a competitor here in this space. But Jeff's point of view was the margins are super thin, Hollywood is opaque, you can't really like compete with the big publishing industries there or publishing companies there. But he disagreed and committed. He said, I disagree with your analysis here, but you have a runway of 5 years. Here's some money, and if you can't like make this work, then after 5 years we'll shut it down. And now I think Prime Video is the second biggest like streaming provider on the planet, and so which is why like I think people have to like internalize it not only from the perspective of this is a decision the company made that I don't agree with, but also like broadly even in a business sense, it's a way of taking chances and like really committing to getting stuff done.
Yeah. I may disagree, but that's the decision. I'm behind it. Now I'm putting my full force, not half force, not I told you so force, but full force behind making it happen.
You said it best. Yeah.
And if somebody like Jeff Bezos can do that, then the rest of the world can do it as well. Absolutely. But you're fair to say if it's something you can't then get behind, you have no choice but to leave. Otherwise, you become a negative force in the team that undermines everybody's performance. No go on that one. All right. I want to ask you about one last scenario, and that is the one I hear, oh man, that's so hard. We were peers on a team. You work really well with people, and you get promoted to the manager position, and another peer who may be older, may feel that they have more experience, may have felt that they were more in line for it, or whatever other reason, doesn't get it. And now I've got a unhappy team member and tension. How do you handle that kind of bad news?
So I've had that happen to me once, and it was actually with a friend. So so he and I were friends, or still are friends, and I hired him onto my team, and there were like lots of reasons why it didn't work out, and in the end, I had to like deliver the news to him, saying, "Hey, it's not going to work out." Um, and so it's people say that separate like work and life, treat it differently, but it's hard, right? You build so many personal relationships at work, so it's hard to like completely go, okay, this is work and this is life. So I think what I tell managers is your job is somewhat of a investment manager, right? So you've been given a bunch of dollars or whatever currency, and the company is expecting you to turn those dollars into something bigger than what they gave you. So your job is to invest that in the form of people, and get something positive out of the whole like experience. And this is why, like, in that situation, right? Somebody is like senior than you, somebody spend more time at the company, is like unhappy with your leadership style, unhappy with like reporting to you. I would go to them and say, hey, this is what it is. So I'm the leader of this team. My goal is to make sure like this team is productive and it adds value to the company and has a positive impact for the business. And for that to happen, I want you to be able to be productive, be motivated, and be engaged in the work you're doing. And what can I do to get you to that space? And me leaving this job is not an option, right? So if you put that aside for a second, what do I have to do to get you into a headspace that is more, that is better for the company? And usually that conversation could go in a few ways. Right? One way is like, hey, I want to have a seat at the table. I want to be there when decisions are being made. Then those are easy ones, right? So, okay, great. Like, I'll make sure you're included in decisions. But I'll also encourage the manager to be clear about what decisions are democratic and what aren't. And as long as they understand it, then easy peasy, like problem solved, right? But if they go, oh, I should have been the manager and not you, then there's only one option, right? So if you can't get yourself into a headspace where you're going to be productive, then you have to leave. And I'll help you help you land a new job and help you become more productive. One of my old bosses used to say is index on your happiness. And that's what I tell my team is, how do we get you to be happy? Like, what can we do here reasonably within the bounds of what the company can do and not do to get you to a happy place? And if we can't get you to a happy place here, maybe a happy place is somewhere else. And we should have an honest conversation about it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. There's precursors in all that you're saying that I think are really fundamental to having an effective career and being an effective manager. One of those is this notion of what is democratic and what is not democratic. When am I soliciting your opinion? And when I solicit your opinion, do you get a vote or am I deciding? So, and no apologies for that. Like black and white, I'm deciding, I'm not deciding. The decision is up for debate. The decision has already been decided. So like there's clarity in that, okay? And then no apologies for doing the job that you've decided you're going to do. Like, I'm deciding your salary. I'm deciding this. I'm deciding that you can't have that role that you want or whatever. That's it. I'm done. And you can do that in a kind way. You don't have to be mean about it. But it's clarity so people know what the rules are. All right. So that's one piece. The second piece you talked about throughout this is this whole notion of practice in peace times, which is a bit of an investment in those key relationships so that you've been transparent with people. You've voiced your opinion at the right time. You know what to challenge them on. You've tested what are they open for feedback on, what are they not open for feedback on. You're respectful of what is their key strength, even if you don't necessarily like it. You see they were hired for that reason and that's what they're going to do. And so there's that investment, if you will, in understanding some of the key people, okay? And then there's this final piece, which is I'm willing to take accountability. I'm sorry, it was my fault. and here's what I'm going to do, and here's the update, so everybody knows what's happening, how it's happening, where it's happening. Not overpromise, because that feels like a good thing at the time. Be very clear about what you're doing, how you're doing it. Certain you can meet those deadlines. And then you recognize that sometimes it's best to say, no, you can't accept that. Then it is time to go.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Great advice. Mahesh, what did I miss that you think leaders need to know, new managers need to know, young managers?
Well, last thing I'll add is, all of this entire conversation, if a new manager is listening to this, they might put them off. This is like so messy. Why would I ever want to do this? So I just want to let new managers know that leading people and managing a team and growing other leaders can be incredibly fulfilling, because you are having a orders of magnitude impact on somebody's career, like the business at large, the company itself, and it's not like as an individual contributor you get successes through your own work, right? And those successes are you get it much more frequently than as a manager. But the satisfaction that comes out of leading a team and winning for the business, it lasts a long time. So it can be incredibly fulfilling if you walk in with the right assumptions and the right framework.
Right. And recognize all of these things that we've been talking about. Those keep you from having too many sleepless nights, I might argue. And that is a good thing if you're going to be a young manager. All right, Mahesh, what a fun conversation. I love the advice. Mahesh Guruswamy, the book that we've been talking about is How to Deliver Bad News and Get Away with It, A Manager's Guide. Mahesh, I hope you keep writing. I'm going to send you a couple topics I'd love to have you write about, because this is an awesome book and a wonderful conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Wanda.
All right, and join us next week for another episode in Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone.
Thank you for joining us today. Tune in for another edition next week with Dr. Wanda Wallace on the Voice America Business Channel. Reach outside your comfort zone this week.